three of us all share and care deeply about is really just making really complicated home renovation and ADU projects easy to understand. I'd love to start by introducing everyone. I can kick us off. I'm Liz Young, the founder and CEO of Realm. Realm makes anyone a home expert. We help homeowners tackle big renovation projects with our mobile app and advisory offering. Ryan, why don't I kick it over to you?
Sure. Yeah. So I run a YouTube channel called How to ADU and help homeowners by creating educational material that gets them kind of over that big steep learning curve for these big projects, accessory dwelling units, where you're building a house in your backyard, you're converting part of your house into an apartment. So hopefully if you're watching this, you know about that already. How about you, Derek?
So folks, I'm Derek Sherrell. I'm located in Southern Oregon, and I'm a lifelong housing advocate and infill housing developer specializing in the ADU strategy. If you're tuned into this, you probably know about Realm. You probably love Ryan and you're one of his, fanboys or gals. And I'm here to just hopefully help more average people do infill housing, whether it's one ADU in your backyard or it's an infill development with multiple missing middle options. So hopefully I'm here to add value to all of our listeners. And if you're watching this later, feel free to drop comments down below. We all surf around on these and want to answer your questions. We're here to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something the three of us all share and care deeply about is really just making really complicated home renovation and ADU projects easy to understand and less overwhelming for the average person. So I'm pumped to dive in today. All right, I'll kick us off with our first topic. So let's talk about the current real estate market. So obviously the current market's pretty wild right now, right? We have really high interest rates. We have regulations that are changing, particularly about ADUs rapidly, I would say weekly at this point across the country. Is now, given all those things, is now a good time to launch an ADU project or some other type of large home renovation? And if so, why? How do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I'll take that one first here. As somebody who's actively investing in multiple markets as a licensed general contractor and developer and kind of DIYer, like a little bit of everybody who's listening, you're inside of me. I say yes. If we have good policy, good practice, and reserves. I just want to tell a really quick story here about being a building contractor leading up to 05, 06, 07, 08. I'm not saying this is the same market. It's completely different fundamentals. We're not having subprime lending, which basically collapsed and started the great financial crisis. But what we are having is kind of a frothy market, what I would call inflated prices and maybe a little bit of compression in the marketplace with these really high rates. So I always tell people that a major home renovation or a new build or even a deck that's going to cost you $10,000, only look at that project if you have actual cash reserves. So the only people I see get really hammered, and I have in the past, are people that were out on the very edge of their spending ability. And they were kind of like build and pray. We can't build and pray. We have to have good fundamentals with our ideas, and we also have to have cash reserves. So I say it's a great time to build and buy. I'm currently working up deals right now, and I'm like, man, set 7 or 8 is like a huge buy down on a primary owner occ. If we're looking to do a cash out refi or even an investment property, we're at 8, 9, 10%. So these numbers are really hard, but if the fundamentals are there, for example, an ADU in an expensive market that's going to rent really well, it's a go. Or if it's, you're looking at spending $8,000 a month to put grandma in home care or build an ADU, it's still a great time to be building. Just check the fundamentals.
Yeah, on your point on being able to afford it, I was just looking at the stats around how much home equity exists in the U.S. And I think the number was the average American homeowner currently has about $274,000 or $275,000 of home equity. And of course, in the most expensive markets on the West Coast, like California and Seattle and Portland, I mean, those numbers are even higher. So there is a lot of that home equity to tap into to fund these larger projects, which then can have a huge financial impact on your home's value or just save you money. To your point, hey, instead of paying for a senior living facility, let's have our family close by.
That's it. And I'm glad Derek took it because he practices what he preaches. He's like swinging the hammer on a bunch of projects right now. And so I think it's easy to talk theory, whether you should be investing or not investing. But when you see people who are really in the market, they're still finding the right properties, they're still doing the projects, they still see the opportunities are there. And like it's always down to your specific situation, right? And that's why it's good also to talk about reserves. It's the imminent Jay-Z said, if you can't buy it twice, you can't afford it. And I think it's true that it's often tempting to jump into these big projects because you see everybody doing stuff around you.
Totally.
But you got to be aware what your opportunity cost is and what you're not doing with your money too.
Yeah, you guys know this at Realm. I mean, one of the reasons that we take that really seriously, like we only want people to do projects that they can afford to do and that are going to really give them the value that they want, whether that's home value or just personal benefit. So we invest a lot of our investment dollars and time into building accurate pricing, accurate ROI to really give people that full picture, in a real time way of like, how much should this cost and what are my options to pay for it? One other thing in this topic I would love to dive into a little bit is something we see, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think, is this idea of like being stuck in place. So when we look at kind of what's going on with the current real estate market, you see, to your point, Derek, like home prices have been stable. They actually have been rising generally, Q2 to Q3, I think the average home price went up by about $10,000 across the US. You have steady home prices. You have rising interest rates, right? 7-8% first mortgage interest rates. And then on top of that, you have, basically an aging housing stock with not enough new construction. So for us, what we're seeing at Realm is it's created this perfect storm where people are like, wait, I need something new out of my home. Maybe it's space for grandma. Maybe it's just a renovated or newer kitchen. But like, I'm not going to go buy a new house because I'm sitting on a low 3% first mortgage right now. So we're really seeing Americans look to double down on their existing property and improve it or expand it. And the increasingly friendly ADU regulations are making that even more possible. Are you seeing a lot of that as well?
Yeah, people are totally trapped in their house right now, right? Like it's always been a little true, right? Especially in California, in the Bay Area, there's lots of people who, even 5 years ago when mortgage rates were great, they're looking at downsizing and they're like, hold on, I've got a beautiful big house that I'm super familiar with, that I've made my own over 20 years. I raised my kids here. And now if I downsize, I'm going to be in like I'm competing for this sort of the smallest homes in the market. And so I'm paying so much per square foot to trade into a different neighborhood, a different house. And instead, if they can tackle it and do an ADU, move into their own ADU and let the kids move into the primary, that's a whole different situation. And so, yeah, it's already been true, even when rates are great. Now that people are feeling even a little bit more trapped behind their beautiful rate, it's even truer.
Yeah, I would agree with Ryan. Well said. I would say I'm just for full disclosure, I'm an amateur at best economist, but I do watch the market a lot. I do think that there's a lock-in effect currently for reasons that Ryan mentioned, but there's still opportunities out there. I would say people that have to sell. So we have divorce, job change, death. There are still people moving around. I think overall transactions are down about 40%. So if you can take that theory into the market, I would like to say that the housing market is not one market. There's micro markets everywhere. This strategy may not work in your backyard, but it works in a lot of them. So I would always remind people that JP, Jerome Powell, bless his heart, the rate environment is national. Like everybody is playing on the same exact field. The markets that we deploy these strategies in, if we're going to use Realm's products to do a big garden remodel, or we want to build 2 ADUs and split the lots, we have to be looking at the fundamentals in our own market. So just for a disclaimer there. But yes, I would say people are locked in. They're not going to downsize and double their mortgage. They're just not going to do it. They'll get comfortable. They'll put in a ladder stair. They'll put in an elevator if they need to get onto the front porch, because it's still, 6 figures X cheaper than trying to move. With that being said, coupled with easing regulations and more publicity from people like Ryan that are shouting from the rooftops, sometimes with a megaphone, there's more opportunity to see other people do this. And also there's some new companies to the marketplace that they haven't nailed it yet. Nobody's nailed ADU financing. We're going to talk about that, but it's getting better. And then that equity piece, just to back up slightly, that wealth that Americans have that's tied up in their home is a great point. We just always, me as like the realist, is always like, let's remind ourselves that we have to have an exit strategy. So say we have that national average of 200K locked in our house, we still have to tap it either with a home equity line of credit that's usually going to be a adjustable rate mortgage that we're eventually going to long-term want to cash out of or refi out of, or we have to refi the whole house, or we have to take what I think is the best option, which is a fixed rate second. But it's going to be at today's rates too. So that equity, it can be deceiving. Yes, we have a lot of equity, but to actually like stick a tap into it and pull it out, there's a cost as well. So I always tell people to have an exit strategy. That doesn't mean sell your house. It means if you're tapping into the equity, what's your long-term plan to put fixed rate debt on it? The most advantageous thing we can do as builders and investors and as business minds is fix all the variables. And when we don't have fixed variables, I always just tell people to be cautious. And that's just for our price sensitive viewers. As a price sensitive DIYer at heart, I realize that a lot of our viewers today, like money isn't as much of an issue. There's other things in their life that are way more important. Not everybody has the financial, insecurity or the price sensitivity that I often speak of. So I want to hit the broad brush to get everybody. But those are some things that were on my mind when you were asking those questions, Liz. Thank you.
Yeah, we think, go ahead, Ryan.
We just wrapped an ADU tour and Derek was down here, got to see some of the units. We did 17 different projects in Berkeley, Oakland, and the East Bay. And it is crazy how different the projects came in. Like we sat down and we were like, we're going to try to have some that are more affordability minded and some that are a little extravagant. I did not expect the Fork to be a unit for 92,000 all in and a unit for 800,000 all in, right? 800,000, even 400,000 is a number that like blows people's minds because you could be buying whole houses, right? In markets. And here it's just like cash construction almost sometimes. So it really does. Your situation varies. Whoever you are out there watching, you know your priorities. You got to think about your project.
Yeah, I mean, we see a wild range. So Realm has now in the last 2 years powered a little over 2,000 projects in California, which I'm really proud of and really excited by. A good chunk of those are ADUs. We also do additions and major interior remodels. And we see the same thing. We see, such a large range in price driven by, really the quite hyper local geos that the ADU is being built in, paired with size and quality of finishes. Our average one, is about in the low twos right now in the California market, but we see the same thing, Ryan. And I think from a financing perspective, it has been really interesting. So for our customers, about half are using a home equity line of credit or a second mortgage to basically fund it. Half are using some combination of cash and other lending products. But I really agree, Derek, with your point on like, ideally getting fixed rate debt is the safest way to approach these investments. And when we work with our customers, we assign each homeowner that works with Realm, we assign an advisor to, and they help them really look at, okay, given my credit score, given my home equity, given the cash I have, given the use of this ADU or this project, what are all my financing options and which one's the best for me today? Because there's a lot of like specificity, right? Like if my debt, my loan to value is higher than Ryan's, it might not make sense for me to really like max out that home equity line of credit because it could push my overall loan to value to too high of a rate. So that's definitely something we take seriously and want to guide our customers on because it's complicated stuff. There's no place, I think, besides really us that can say like, hey, how do we use home credit to our advantage?
Yeah, that's an amazing point. And just to, a shameless plug to our sponsor today, Realm, like they're doing a great job at that. Like you're not just getting some broker that's just like trying to sell you a product. They have a whole team that is trying to place you in all the right holes for the peg that you're using. So I just wanted to mention that you don't get that kind of white glove service a lot of other places. One of the few reasons why you guys are my sole partner right now that I believe in, because I actually think the product you have is valuable.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's a good time to gush. May I?
I'll take the gushing.
I send dozens of people over to Realm, right? And like it's really important to me that when they come back, they go, yeah, it was a good experience.
Yeah.
Or if Realm isn't the solution that got them to the finished project, I want to know exactly why so I can get to the bottom of it. Because otherwise, like it's a big piece of work. Like these first sort of steps of finding your designer, finding your scope of work, finding your builder, figuring out your financing. It's what like professional developers spend a long time developing that experience to be able to juggle all those moving pieces that all bump into each other. So as a normal homeowner, it's a really easy path to walk down. And I love it. I love being able to send people your way.
Ryan, we just had one of a viewer that was watching your channel, Dan and Kristen, that used Realm after watching our channel, used Realm to build an ADU. They were, I think, initially thinking about renting the ADU out, but then said, you know what, actually our daughter and her family is going to move in instead. And it's allowed their whole family to affordably be in one spot. So stories like that just make me so happy.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Because they also got the grant, which is cool.
Yes.
And in the state of California, just today, before this call, I was like, I might not be able to make the call. Cal HFA was just having their board meeting, and they've approved another $25 million to go to the $40,000 grant.
Wow.
So that's we're recording on October 26th. So that's officially another 25 million. They're going to aim to launch it in December, they said.
Amazing.
And they are going to change one thing, which is the income eligibility requirements. And so it's going to be a little stricter since there's less money to go around. They're going to prioritize projects at 80% AMI. And we can put up a chart in the link or whatever in the description below so people can figure out if that's them or not.
That's great.
Cool opportunities abound for people like Dan and Kristen.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that might be a good segue in talking about some of the differences from one geography to another when it relates to ADUs. Obviously, we have a lot of expertise here across California, Seattle, Portland. So I'd love to hear your guys' take on like, wait, how do the ADU rules and maybe just broadly building an ADU, how does that vary across these markets?
Yeah, well, I talk a lot about rules, so maybe I'll start babbling and then Derek clean up with real world experience. But I think what's really interesting is that these rules do vary a lot. Even when there's statewide rules like California has benefited from, the implementation and the enforcement always comes down to some humans at the local level. And so it's really important to know what the state is willing to fight for and defend for you. But at the same time, in some ways, it's more important to have a good relationship with the locals and to keep things copacetic and to say, hey, well, what could we do here? Instead of, I know what my rights are. That's never the way you want to start a conversation. But having said that, I do love my state rules because what they do is they open up new avenues and they get people's imagination going. So like right now, I'm not going to start rattling off bill numbers, but 1033, the one we'll talk about, that this is a piece of legislation that's going to allow the state of California to start seeing the separate sale of ADUs, ADU condos. And this is something that's already been happening in the Pacific Northwest. And so maybe Derek could talk a bit more practically about it. But as soon as that becomes available as an option in a market as large as California, even if the law requires cities to opt in one at a time, as soon as that becomes available, people start thinking differently about their property and they realize, oh man, this changes everything. That's really exciting because it inspires people. It gets their imagination going.
Completely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, it's very site specific. There's not one housing market. There's not one ADU prone market. I would say a few things clearly is we've got 4 states that have overarching really good legislation: California, Oregon, Washington, and now Montana. I would say that the laws every day are less restrictive. We're seeing more and more things pass. And what I think is going to happen is we're going to turn a lot of homeowners, which is our greatest path to wealth, is getting on the property ladder and having a home. That's how we build wealth over time, is through appreciation and inflation. And it's going to turn average everyday homeowners into developers, because as we're able to build this product, in every market, it doesn't work awesome. It may not cash flow great in Omaha, Nebraska, but if you're still wanting your mom in your backyard in an ADA compliant or accessibility open unit, like that's still a ton of value. So don't always confuse like price with value. But on the business side, for example, the ADU tour that Ryan and I were on, my favorite ADU I saw was 300 square feet. I did a quick walkthrough video with the owner and designer of the company, and it was a $200,000 all-in video. And I got so much like semi-negative feedback from people saying that's so crazy, that's so like such an awful REI, ROI, like, bad investment. What's the return? And in reality, it's like, well, that rents for $2,000 a month in that market. That's a 1% cash on cash return, a 10 cap, which is an absolute home run on a brand new high efficiency unit in a market that everybody wants to be in. So the relativity, I think, is going to increase in the favor of the action takers that have property and are willing to take risks. The other thing I would say to piggyback onto what Ryan brought up was, you know, the laws, and the cities are interpreting some laws differently, even though it's overarching state. I would recommend our homeowners that are listening, in every market that allows ADUs, there's some kind of ADU expert. Find the person that's already done what you want to do. And this is like a total strategic tip. Like, take them out to lunch, offer to pay them for their time, offer to add value to them in some way, and ask them, hey, what check sheet did you use to get through the city? Just about every market, there's somebody that's already done what you want to do. So we have to network. We have to connect with those people. Not everybody has a YouTube channel or is easy to get a hold of on social, but you can find those people in your areas by going to the planning department. You can also call the county and ask who's recorded any of these new things. And then the last point would be the ability to sell. So what California is going crazy about right now, and what's driving Ryan's new videos to the moon, is the fact that people are going to be able to take this piece of land that we can kind of already, there's kind of already a process in a lot of states, but this is going to make it easier for people to sell the product, whether it's condo law or fee simple lot partitioning. Let's just not get in the weeds. Let's just say that now this unit we build, we don't have to put long-term debt on. There's a possibility that we can sell it to fund the project, or we can sell the front house and move into the new one that has no stairs. And it's just going to drive, unfortunately, it's also going to drive prices up. You know, when we went from a 10-year to a 30-year mortgage, home ownership decreased slightly and prices of homes went up 20%. I expect to see a little bit of a lag effect bubble in the economic cycle of affordability of these, because we just added, they're so much more valuable now that you can sell them. I don't want to be too long-winded, but super great question. Like, that topic is what's going to drive a lot of infill and a lot of housing. And I just hope we can keep the prices in check as we go.
Yeah. I mean, I so agree that you're going to have this huge wave of, you know, the average American homeowner that's going to become a mini developer, right? And it's an incredible once in a generation opportunity for people to still start to build this portfolio via their primary residence as a starting point with the changing regulation. Like, how cool is that? And when I think about, you know, what that can offer people, like, one, sure, it can offer you to have your family all in one spot, but it can also offer you an incredibly lucrative side hustle that could end up becoming maybe your main hustle if you play your cards right. So it's a really cool financial opportunity. While you guys were talking, one thing that might be too is like, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to say one thing to that exact note is, you know, as many ADUs as I've built, I've always kept them. I've never sold a single ADU. And the property that I walked this morning, I did an inspection on. We're trying to get this closed. It'll be the first one that, like, it doesn't make sense to hold. I'm potentially going to sell it. So back to our original question of, like, does it work in this market? Yes, if we pivot. It may not work to put long-term debt service coverage ratio debt on a product and hold it as workforce housing. It may work if we sell it, and by making smaller lots and smaller houses, they're well below the median, the middle price point in our markets. So just another strategy, like, even with high rates, as regulations loosen up and we can produce more housing, maybe it goes on the sale block, but still good for housing.
Totally. So while you guys are talking, one thing that came to mind to me is, like, the lingo. There's so many terms I hear thrown around, and it seems like they do vary a little bit based on the region. Like, I've heard in Seattle, it's a dadu is detached ADU. So Ryan and Derek, can you just walk us through, like, what's the lingo in the areas you guys are experts, and are there any differences?
There's always differences, even when it's the same word. That's the hardest part. It's like when it's accessory dwelling unit, even in one area, right? Like, you could be, let's say I'm building one in Napa, California. There's the local city ordinance and the state rules, but then there's Fannie and Freddie regulations, and they each define the ADU differently, and like in one of them a stove rough-in means one thing, and like there's a telltale sign of it's really, even as somebody who cares a lot about this is impossible to keep track. I got like a flow chart somewhere that I have to bust out. But the important thing to remember is that there's a lot of words for these, but in a lot of ways, it's word games, right? And that's why it goes back to like know your local planning team, know your local building department, because what matters is what you can get, where you can get done. I'm not going to say get away with, but what you can get accomplished and approved.
Yeah.
And sometimes you want to use one set of words and it might be accessory dwelling unit, or it might be detach or attach or carve out. It might be any of these things that we talk about, junior accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
But other times it's going to be something else. And if the solution to your housing situation is that you should get a detached guest room or a detached addition or a guest house or whatever they want to call it, figure out what you want to do, figure out what you need to say to the government to get you there and the finance to get you there, and focus on that. Don't get too bogged down in like rules lawyering people about like, well, technically
Yeah, Ryan, something you just said that jumped
Yeah.
out to me is we talk a lot about like navigating these rules and the local in the local offices is sometimes more art than science. Like there's a lot of different rules, there's a lot of different ways that you can achieve your goals, and like at Realm we want everyone to follow the rules, but we also acknowledge that like you should use the rules to your advantage and say, okay, cool, I have an opportunity to come up with a bunch of creative options for my property here. What's best for me that fits within these guidelines?
Well, yeah, that's amazing. I think both of you have been watching my YouTube channel because that's like
yeah, I steal
practical
everything
advice.
I know. Look, become an expert in your local planning and zoning. That's my Derek.
Yes,
I
that's
have
my
that over a
line.
door.
Totally. And then my second one is call it what you want. I always empower the planner. Hey, you went to school for
Yeah.
this. You've been working in this code for a long time. What would you do if this
Mm.
was your property? And then they
Yeah.
like bring you under their arm and they're like, let me show you. I love that. Back to the question of what are they called?
Yeah.
You know, there's a national standard that was written by AARP that is the national model code that most states are looking at, most cities are looking at, and they're starting there, and most of them are adopting that ADU. Really, the A is the most important part. It's accessory to a primary structure, but I think as we go further down this road, eventually it's going to just be, I think it's going to, the A should stand for another. Eventually it's just going to be another dwelling unit, more of them. But right now that A is really, really important because accessory is huge, because in pretty much every code, there has to be some kind of primary house there. And it usually is in a single family zone. So the A is important, but at the end of the day, the only acronym that I give a damn about for people watching is C of O, so certificate of occupancy. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter as long as it's legally done and somebody can sleep in it overnight. That's what we care about. So don't get bogged down. Seattle is really a big market for condoing ADUs. They're building ADUs for 300. The next day, after the condo lawyer gets done with them for $2,000 or $3,000, they're worth $650. So JADU is kind of a California only term for junior, 500 square feet. There's a little bit more if you use ingress and egress. And then the DADU, the Seattle thing, the detached ADU, and that's market specific. That's not state specific. It's just in Seattle where a lot of people are selling them, and there's some big influencers that talk about DADUs. So that language got kind of popular, which is good. Call them what you want. The more eyeballs we get looking at these products, the better. And Ryan nailed it. At the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter what we call them. Let's just get them done.
Totally. The zoning stuff is something that we at Realm care deeply about. So I'm not sure how many people know this, but Realm has built the largest zoning database in the US. And to do this, we've been doing it for years. We went direct to thousands of municipalities. And what our learning was early days is every municipality reports their rules in an entirely different way. So as the average, American, it's really hard to interpret that. You need translation. Like the rules are really, really difficult if you're not a professional. So we went to all these municipalities and collected the information. And sometimes it was sent to us on a disc, sometimes over the phone. I mean, all different formats, right? And we standardize that so that way, if you go into the Realm mobile app, you can see, regardless of where you are, what state you're in, how many square feet you can add. If you can add an ADU, how many ADUs you can add. So we really want to make sure that we can give you that like early zoning information, just so you can decide like, hey, is this possible? Should I go down kind of this path, instantaneously, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think this is a good example of like 99% of people, that's it's the conversation so far. For like 1% of people, they come back and like, it's nothing like what you described, Ryan. I'm having this weird problem. And that's kind of where I get really nerdy and then
Yes.
become the rules lawyer. So
Yes.
having said don't be a rules lawyer, I will say when you do need a rules lawyer, I love bugging the locals and seeing like, why is your housing elements zone this lot as one thing, but your
Yeah.
actual zoning map says another, and your GIS says a third thing. Can you guys point me to the maps? Like where's the real record here?
Yeah.
It's always fun kind of doing the research,
Mm.
folks.
That's awesome.
I've got a
Well,
quick tip. I've got a quick
yeah.
practical tip on that. So we like to get things we want to hear in writing, and we like to get things we don't want to hear verbally. So I always tell people if you're on the phone with a planner and they're telling you something, just send them a quick follow-up email. Hey, like, this is how I understood it. Can I get a reply that's confirming that I heard that right? Because the bottom line is the rules change all the time. Not like at the type 4 full municipal code update view, but they change with you could get the same different answers from the same person. My trifecta favorite is when you get 3 different answers from 3 different people. It changes all the time. There's clear and objective standards are what we're aiming for in planning, but there's still a ton of subjectivity. I always have gotten the best results on a Friday. This is a true story. This is not, I'm not making this up, but
I love this tip.
People like to make decisions on Friday. They're usually in a better mood. True story. So just a few things that I've learned along the way.
Rolling into the weekend.
Yeah,
All right.
there's another new law that piggybacks off this in California. So starting in January, there's a mandate for all cities to have a different process for pre-approval or pre-reviewed plan.
Oh, wow.
And that's a little weird because people are like, what, is every city going to have pre-reviewed plans that they like commission? Not necessarily. But there's one little line in that law that says if a plan has been through that city's planning department and building department in that 3-year code cycle, like because the building code changes every 3 years, then it is automatically considered pre-reviewed.
Oh.
And so once you get one person on a Friday to say yes, obviously there's some things that'll change site to site. But if the plans are otherwise identical within that jurisdiction, when you're submitting, you just go, and remember, you've already reviewed this one. You reviewed it, last year, and you don't have to consider these elements. You just have to look at the site specific stuff. And that should be another exciting one to see how it actually unrolls. But get that yes on Friday once.
I love that tip. All right. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, so why don't we wrap it up? Let's talk about the future. So we're all obviously, really excited about the changing regulations that are becoming more friendly and opening up all this opportunity for people in their homes or potentially to become investors. If we fast forward the clock 5 years from now, like what gets us excited about home ownership and ADUs? And I can kick us off. Like for me, our vision for Realm and mission is like, build a single destination for homeowners, give them one spot they can turn to navigate most big home decisions, and then connect them to the people, the contractors, the lenders, the insurance providers that can actually make those things a reality in real life. So for me, it's like, I get really excited if the average American can just, one, feel less stressed, feel like they can trust, can trust information, can make decisions quickly, can make good decisions. And then I think second is that they can just get more out of their house, whether that's money, use, utility, their family being close by. And that's why I love upzoning and the ADU regulations that are becoming more and more friendly, because at the end of the day, it will let Americans get more out of their homes. So what gets you guys excited in the next, 5 years?
You want to go?
Go ahead. I'm going to let you say a bunch of smart stuff, and then I'll add something to the end, and I'll look intelligent.
I'm getting super nerdy on this one. Like I want people to get involved in local government again. I think there's one of the most wonderful things that's even happened to me through learning about ADUs is that I've been part of this growing wave of people who say yes to more housing and yes to more affordable housing, yes to better transit options, but yes to all these cool things that like we want in our communities. And it's let me learn about local government and plug into local government again. And that's not it's not exciting, right? Like not everybody should go to like 6-hour meetings. That's not what I want. But I do want people to realize that you can rail about national politics all day and not make a bit of difference.
Yeah.
If you get really involved in your local community, even just like writing an email once a month and like following along with what's going on, you can make this massive difference. And housing is a great avenue to that because every month you either pay rent or mortgage, right? Like almost all of us have a monthly reminder of how important housing and local policy is. And so that's been one of the really exciting things for me. And the winning momentum of this ADU movement in particular, like winners attract friends and more winners, and people keep joining from the sides. And that's what you could tell I'm excited.
I love that. I so agree with that. Like this has been, I think, a thing that's really rallied communities together, and it's shown us that like we can have an impact, a significant impact at the local level on solving one of the biggest problems in the US right now, which is the housing shortage.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. I agree 100%. And I'll just add some practical stuff as my followers and my subscribers have come to know me for, and that is, this is a cyclical thing. Okay. If we look back in history, what we have to see is that there's about a 10-year cycle, and we have this huge buzz about housing. Americans sell houses back and forth to each other. They go up in value. Everybody wants to be a builder and has a brand new truck with a lumber rack and buys their significant other a BMW. And then we see this kind of glut of supply come on. And then what we see is a downturn. Every healthy economy needs recessions. In that recessions, our building professionals have less and less work. They lose some of their assets. They go back to school to be a radiologist tech. And all of a sudden, we don't have enough supply. We don't have anybody that knows how to build them. And we're back at the bottom of the cycle with lower prices.
Yeah.
So I want to remind everybody that the ADU law, the legislations we have, the loosening of zoning, the better lending products, amazing companies like Realm that are going to help hold your hand through the whole process. We're on the up cycle of that, while we're coming to the plateau and the down cycle, in my opinion, of our economic standing right now, which is completely natural. It's completely expected. So when you ask me for my 5-year view, I think we're going to be on our way back up the next cycle. So the best time to take action, if you have reserves, is now. The best time to plan, even if you can't. I mean, there's a lot of people out here that can hardly afford groceries. If you're listening to that, like, you can work on your credit. It's free to get credit reports. It's free to talk to a lender. Maybe in 3 to 5 years, you're going to be lendable and you can buy your first single family house and plan your first ADU. I just always want to remind people to, like, let's pull ourselves back to reality. Let's have a long-term vision. If we're going to, hire Realm to do a small interior renovation, or we're going to build multiple, call them whatever acronym, units in the backyard, we have to think long-term. We have to plan for downturns. We have to understand that this is a long-term game. If you ask me where I see things, the ADU movement in 10 or 20 years, I see a huge increase of supply, which is going to be great. It's going to be supply and demand 101. There's going to be more new units putting downward pressure on prices and helping the tenant who, quite frankly, needs a break. And I'm seeing that firsthand. My market burned down. We lost 3,000 structures in 2 cities on September 8th of 2020. A lot of people have rebuilt. I think I've had some influence on it. A lot of people have rebuilt with ADUs, some of them even my own plans. So my ADU rentals, we've had to lower our prices because there's a bunch of brand new cool ADUs in our town because of tragedy and because we went through that fire process. But I've got to see kind of an expanded, kind of compressed, speeded up cycle of what I'm talking about. And in the end, it's a great thing. Just if you can boil all that 3 minutes down to one thing, it's think long term.
Totally. I love that. All right, guys. Well, we are at time. This has been so awesome. Ryan, Derek, thank you for the time. It's so fun to riff on this. It's such an important thing to be knowledgeable about too. So thank you for your time.